everybody, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet, brought to you by Anarchapulco, the world's largest anarcho-capitalist conference in the world, coming this February 19th to 21st, 2016, right here in Acapulco. Got a great guest on. I've had him on once before, and it's a real true pleasure and honor to have him back. Marc Victor, the attorney for freedom, essentially an anarchist attorney who really causes a lot of problems in the status courts, and I like that. He does a lot of great work, and it seems like he's always doing something to try to fight for freedom. So Marc, great to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on your show, and I'm really looking forward to coming to Anarchapulco. I think it's interesting in your introduction in the show, you said it's the world's largest anarcho-capitalist gathering, and I certainly don't dispute that, but wouldn't it be a great world if people did dispute that and people were arguing about different anarcho-capitalist conferences? Are you aware of many different anarcho-capitalist conferences around the world?
Not really. Actually, on the website it says the world's first and largest anarcho-capitalist conference, and we had the first one this year. I couldn't find any that looked like a true anarcho-capitalist conference. There's a number of smaller sort of group get-together sort of things that most of the people are ANCAP, but they didn't seem to make the conference about anarcho-capitalism. So in that sense, I guess we're the first and largest, and probably the only one.
We ought to say something about that at the conference this year. We ought to challenge people in a friendly way and really offer to help them as well to start your own anarcho-capitalist conference.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a number of people from Europe last year, and they were interested in doing that also. So yeah, we'll see what happens. So you've been busy, as always. I see you all the time doing stuff. What's your latest? I know you were working with Barry Cooper on something. He's a past Anarchast guest, and I totally love him. He lives here in Mexico. He'll be at Anarchapulco. What have you been up to lately? What kind of trouble are you raising there?
Man, I don't even know where to begin. I have an article coming out tomorrow on LouRockwell.com, which is, I guess, sort of the center of the anarcho-capitalist world, if there is such a thing as a center to the anarcho-capitalist world. My article is going to be entitled, "Are You a Thug?" And so I think you can figure out what that's about. And it's been kind of a difficult article to write because, started out as a 3 or 4 page article, and there are so many things you want to put into this notion of what's a thug, who's a thug, to bring it into the political realm, outside the political realm, that it morphed into maybe a little bit longer articles. So maybe I'll bring this one with me to Anarchapulco. And I wrote a few articles that were more about peace, which I'm really a huge fan of, but they seemed a little soft, and I don't ever want to lose my edge. So after that, I wrote Why We Should Abolish All DUI Laws, and now Are You a Thug? So I'm going back to my more, I guess, call it a bit of confrontational roots, but confrontational in a freedom and peace kind of way. Yeah,
absolutely. I know recently you've been quite active in the anti-drug war sort of things. I know you've been doing some debates and things like that. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I'm at the front lines of that fight. I mean, right where the rubber hits the road, that's the place where the government actually grabs the physical body of another human being and says, we're going to now throw you in a cage for having the audacity to control your own body. And of course, we're talking about competent adults here, because if you're not competent or you're not an adult, that's sort of a different analysis. But I had the fun occasion here in Arizona where the laws are changing. Ultimately, I'm very optimistic. I think things are moving in the right direction, and the drug war is as good as won. But we're in this stage right here in Arizona where it's sort of quasi-legal. We've got this medical marijuana card. So I had a guy who I was in court with, and he was being put on probation for basically having a small amount of marijuana. But since the case started, he had obtained a medical marijuana card. So I had pointed out to the judge how ridiculous. I said, Judge, you're getting ready to put this guy on probation, and as soon as he gets home, he's going to legally smoke marijuana. The very crime you're putting him on probation for, and you can't even stop him from smoking marijuana while he's on probation for the crime of smoking marijuana. Do you think there's something wrong with this? So that's the environment we're in out here.
Yeah, what are the responses from a judge to that obvious rational logic?
It's really fun because I stand up there in court and I go off and you say all these sort of inflammatory things over and over and over and over again. And usually the judge will just sit there and listen, and then as soon as I finish, they just move on to something else as if I had said absolutely nothing. Every once in a while, I get a judge who actually, agrees and wants to play ball. I had one judge, Judge Gottsfield here in Arizona, who's on the Superior Court, since retired, used to say things to me like this. He would say, Marc, you mean like the same as the war on alcohol, the same as prohibition? You mean when we had cartels and gangs and all violence and all of that? I would say, yes, Judge, just like that. And we kind of go back and forth. Every once in a while, a judge will interrupt and throw in some statist type of a comment, which, of course, I'm happy to debate on the record in court, but not very often. Usually, I don't know if it's because they just want to move the calendar along because they're buried under the crushing volume of drug war cases, or if they actually agree, but they feel restrained from saying anything because they're wearing a black robe. I don't really know, but most of the time they don't want to engage on that. The county attorney, Bill Montgomery, he's the elected county attorney here in Maricopa County. He's engaged with me on a couple of times, and we've debated the drug war, and this is on the internet. Also, one other person, Seth Leibson. We had a really fun debate. My debates are never about marijuana is not dangerous or anything like that. I may mention that, but my debates are always on freedom and the right to control your own body. That's the real issue here, and that's a really fun debate. I'm getting to the point where it's kind of like, are we still talking about whether people can smoke marijuana? I mean, there are people dying from prescription drugs all over the place and all of the other real serious health problems that we're talking about marijuana where we don't have any confirmed deaths in the history of mankind. It's insanity. I always feel like I want to start the debate with, are we really still talking about this? I'm kind of frustrated with the debate. It just seems ridiculous to me. But we need to have it, and we need to make it not about whether it's good for you or bad for you, but we need to completely make it about the freedom question and self-ownership.
Yeah, absolutely. So I saw you were, I don't know what you're doing with Barry Cooper, but I saw something about you two are working together. For people who don't know, Barry Cooper was a past Anarchast guest. He used to be a past narcotics officer who one day tried weed and then quit his job and started busting cops. And he was busting so many that he had to flee the country because the government was constantly putting him in a cage. Interesting guy. He'll be at Anarchapulco. So how long have you known Barry, and what are you doing with him?
I've known Barry a long time. We actually met on a drug case where I had decided to employ him as an expert witness about, as I like to say, Fluffy the dog. And I always like to say, Barry sort of confirmed this for me, that if Fluffy shows up, you don't have any Fourth Amendment rights. And Barry's really a fantastic expert witness in terms of understanding the nature of these dogs and really how any handler can get any dog to alert, forgetting about the fact that you don't even know what an alert is. They say he alerted, but actually he could get them to do a real alert for almost any reason at all. Anybody who's had a dog knows that there are things that you can do with the dog, little cues that the dog is familiar with to get him to sit. And everybody who has a dog knows that a dog will do anything for a treat, right? I mean, they're dogs. They like hot dogs and Kentucky Fried Chicken. And if you have that, the dog will do anything for you. So I used him as an expert witness on a case which really worked out great for us. And we got our way and had a good resolution. And then Barry and I became friends. And he's really a fantastic human being. He's the kind of guy I wish we could just put him on a copy machine and start Xeroxing people. Because he's a guy who was big enough to say, you know what, I've been on the wrong side of this thing for a long time. And now that I've had my paradigm shift and I understand, I'm going to take an active role and try to, I would say, make amends for my past sins. And he's certainly done that. And so Barry has a website. I think it's nevergetbusted.org. And someone hit him up with a case where there was a legal grow in California, and part of it was on the legal side, and part of it was in an illegal area. And so the King's Men came in and decided to destroy the entire grow, even though they were allegedly told in advance, hey, this section here, this is a perfectly legal grow under California law, and they didn't care. They just certainly went ahead and imposed their own personal biases and views and destroyed what may be $1 million worth of property of another person. And so Barry referred the case over to us, and we liked the case. And so I think we ought to proceed on with this case, and we are, just like any other case where a thug destroys the property of another person, that the thug doesn't like their property. Oh, well, so sad. Life's changing for the thug, and we're becoming more civilized and more evolved. And I admit this is a slow process, not as quickly as I would like, but I think we're moving in the right direction overall.
Yeah, you've mentioned that a few times, that you think it is moving in the right direction. That's good to hear. I haven't been noticing by all the police brutality videos and all my friends getting arrested in the U.S. Even Adam Kokesh had to fly back to Washington, D.C. yesterday for a parole hearing. I heard he got out, so that's good. So you're on the front lines, and you actually think things are slowly moving in a better direction. I
do, for lots of reasons. And first off, the thing about the police video issue, it's true, we see lots of videos on police brutality, but this isn't necessarily evidence that police brutality is getting worse. This is just more evidence of evidence about police brutality, right? So cameras are more available and things are being recorded now. I don't know if police brutality is on the increase or not. I suspect it may be, just because we've had so many decades now of the drug war out of control, and there are a few things, maybe nothing I can think of, that more promotes a violent society than this. Imagine taking a huge industry, any industry, take a huge billion-dollar industry, multi-billion-dollar industry, put the whole thing in the black market and think there's not going to be violence surrounding the purchase and sale and transportation of the item. It just is ridiculous. But, this is a good example. People, not just in the United States, people around the world are figuring out that this drug war thing was really dumb. And although there are still a lot of holdouts out there, but like anything else, things change when people's hearts and minds change, and I think they are starting to change in lots of different areas.
Yeah, part of it, I think, is that governments are all going bankrupt around the world. So looking at the drug market as being something that they can legalize and then regulate and tax. But in any case, it's still better than having it just in the black market, or what I call the free market. As the prohibition of alcohol showed, Chicago, even more than today, which is hard to believe, was filled with just headless bodies and gangsters because of the prohibition of alcohol. You'd think people would learn, but hopefully they'll be waking up soon.
Yeah, we're slow learners, but I also note this issue on gay marriage and rights for gay people is really exactly the same question as the marijuana question, right? I mean, who's in charge of your body, you or somebody else? And in both cases they're resolved the same way. And I think that both of these issues are around the same time evolving in the right direction. I think speaks to I think we called it the Volksgeist back in not philosophy, psychology class, sort of this collective conscious of the people. And we're not going to get everybody, but we need to get a higher percentage of people whose hearts and minds are sort of in the game for a free society. And I think we are moving in that direction. I'm not saying there are not setbacks. I'm not saying that things are moving rapidly. I'm not even saying that in my lifetime we're going to be living in a free society. What I am saying is on sort of the macro scale, right? We're moving in the right direction for lots of different reasons. And I'm optimistic, and I'm trying to do everything I can to push the bus in the direction of peace and freedom as quickly as possible. And I know you are too, and I thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, and I thank you. It's moving in the right direction, but slowly. Of course, the next big step is just to get the government completely out of anything to do with anything, plants, marriages, taxes, every single thing that they're involved in. But we just got to take it a step at a time and do what we're doing and just keep fighting the system, essentially.
Let me try to annoy you a little bit, Jeff, because I would state it slightly differently, and I intend to say this down there during my talk. The enemy here is not really government. The enemy is coercion. I like to focus in on what the problem is. I want to rid the world of coercion to the extent we can, everywhere, all the time. And I'm not trying to be an apologist for government, but there might be some things that sort of organized society can do collectively as long as it doesn't involve coercion, like, for example, having a real principal-agent relationship where the agent is exercising rights of the principal, like, for example, self-defense. I don't have any issue with that. I don't know many sort of libertarian anarchist types who have issues with that. We're skeptical about whether that can be done, on a large scale, and I certainly am sensitive to that issue. But I like to try to be a little more precise in the way we state it. I like to say our enemy here is the initiation of force or coercion.
Yeah, absolutely. I just use the word government because that's the biggest manifestation of coercion on the planet today. So it's easy just to pick them. But I agree with you. That's the real issue. And really, government is the word is govern, control, meant, mind. And it really is, as Larkin Rose, who'll be speaking at Anarchapulco, says, it's a superstition. It's just an idea that enough people believe in to cause all kinds of crazy, horrible, violent acts.
Yeah, that's true. And, we're not exactly against control and governing, because we all want to be iron-fisted dictators of our own property, right? I mean, so it's, this is why the word anarchy is misperceived by most, I think. I like the word. I use it sometimes depending on my audience and the reaction I want to get. Sometimes I use the word autarky, which I think better describes sort of a self-rule type of a situation. But I think that we need to focus a little bit more on what I would call outreach and try to bring a few more people, be a little bit more big tent, which is why, I'm a non-voter. I don't vote. Even when I ran for U.S. Senate and I was on the ballot myself, I didn't vote for myself, and I didn't vote for Ron Paul, and I'm not going to vote for Rand Paul. But with that said, I am co-sponsoring a fundraiser for Rand, because I don't think there's a central plan for freedom, and I think Rand is for freedom, despite some of the things that he's said over the years, really. And I think he's doing what he can to push the bus in the right direction. I think his dad did a lot to win hearts and minds for freedom. So even though it's not an arena that I like to play in, I think as people who support freedom, different things ring differently for different people, and whatever gets more people on the bus for a free society, I'm happy with.
Yeah, I agree completely. That's why I supported the Libertarian Party of Canada this last October and throughout the summer. And I got a lot of flack from anarchists. Hey, you can't have anything to do with the system. It's like, no, they're giving you a soapbox. Let's go stand on it. And you know as well as anyone that, being a lawyer, that it's great to have that soapbox.
Give me a big microphone. I'm happy to make a speech to more people. Yeah, so we're in total agreement. I mean, we can use it like a tool. But I think the important point to always state is change doesn't come through the political process. Change comes when enough people change their hearts and minds, right? I mean, sometimes the government scurries up behind the change and tries to take credit, like, for example, this drug war thing, or let's take the slavery issue, right? Slavery ended when enough people changed their hearts and minds about slavery, and then the government jumped in and started, making laws against slavery, and even the Civil Rights Acts. That was possible because people changed their hearts and minds. So the Revolutionary War wasn't an act of legislation, really. And actually, they say it wasn't really even the physical violence of the war that was the revolution. It was the change in thought. And that's what I'm after. I think that is what you get to real change. Because as you know, Jeff, we could install Doug Casey as President of the United States if we wanted to, a mutual friend of ours who neither one of us have any doubts about being a real hardcore pro-freedom, pro-peace kind of guy. And he wouldn't be able to get anything done, not for very long, because not enough people have really changed their hearts and minds. But on the day Doug Casey could get elected President of the United States, that's the day we don't need Doug Casey to run for President of the United States.
Absolutely. It is. That's exactly right, in my opinion, on government. It just follows as we change hearts and minds, and not to use the George Bush hearts and minds where you kill like 1 million Iraqis, but actually telling people, what's going on, these things are much better for them. It's much better for everyone. And you do a lot of that. And so I really appreciate your work. And of course, at Anarchapulco, so many people, so many great people. Amanda Ratchwitz, I don't know if you know her. She's from Arizona. She was on Anarchast recently. She'll be speaking in Anarchapulco, and she had some really good thoughts on how the libertarian or anarchist community all attack anyone who's trying to do anything. If they find just one little thing, they attack them. And that would include even people like Rand Paul, who Judge Napolitano has been on Anarchast and said that he thinks that Rand Paul is a libertarian, pretty much an anarchist. He said Ron Paul is an anarchist. So just because they're trying to use the system and get these messages out there, we shouldn't be attacking them. We should find other people to attack if we're going to attack anyone.
I couldn't agree more with that statement. And I think a way to express it is a way that Butler Schaefer recently expressed it at the Mises Society event. We had a Mises Institute event here in Arizona. In fact, I was tasked to give a 5-minute speech on what's wrong with the justice system and how to improve it in 5 minutes.
How to fix the justice system in 5 minutes. Here it goes. I got 6 things I want to say. Number 1, we're not going to fix anything, anywhere, at any time until we can win more hearts and minds, period. That's the only way to get freedom. We got to win more hearts and minds. It doesn't matter who's elected. It doesn't matter what the Constitution says. It doesn't matter what the Supreme Court interprets. Do we have enough people who understand the ideas of liberty? That's where we need to be focusing. If we got enough, we'll have freedom. If we don't, like right now, we'll have tyranny. So that's where we need to focus about fixing the justice system, really, and everything else. But number 2, you can't fix the justice system until you fix the law, period. It doesn't matter. We got to get rid of all victimless crimes. Think of this as 2 separate areas of the justice system. We've got procedure, which is how do we sort of process cases through the system. Then we've got the substantive law. The procedure's not that bad. If you made me the king of the procedure, there's a lot of things I'd change, but it's really not that terrible. We do a pretty decent job, not perfect, but pretty decent at figuring out who's really guilty and who's not guilty, which really just means the state hasn't proven their case. But it doesn't matter if what they're guilty of is a bunch of stupid shit that shouldn't be against the law in the first place. So fixing the effectiveness of the system doesn't matter and is completely irrelevant until we can fix the law. Number 3, what I'll call jury education. Here's what I mean by this. The jury was supposed to be the final check on state power. Just had a buddy of mine who's a lawyer in Italy who I met because of Lou Rockwell. He read one of my articles in Italy and he contacted me and said, "Hey, Marc, I'm a lawyer in Italy." He came to visit me a couple of weeks ago and we talked about the system. They don't have jury trials there. Could be a big problem. What I love about the jury trial is when I'm standing up there, and we've gone through a lot of aggravation by the time I stand up in closing argument in front of the jury, but when I'm standing there, it's just me and the jurors. It's me and the rest of the people's representatives. They should be able to do whatever they want to do. We should be able to get the bureaucrats and the tyrannical big government nuts out of the way. It's just me and them. I need to be able to tell them, you can judge the law as well as the facts. I need to be able to stand there and say, ladies and gentlemen, even if you think the state's proven the case, the law's screwed up. Who cares if this guy really had marijuana? Find him not guilty. But in addition to that, we need to be able to tell them what the punishment is. They don't get to know what the punishment is. Could you imagine being a juror and coming back with a guilty verdict thinking that this guy's going to get probation when, because of our crazy, ridiculous punishments that we have now all throughout the United States, and Arizona is one of the worst states on this, they don't understand that they just completely ruined somebody's life. People make decisions based differently on what they understand to be the gravity of the decision. As Judge Kaczynski pointed out in an article recently on this very point, we think differently. We invest different amounts of time in whether we should go to Starbucks or some other coffee house in the morning versus whether we're going to buy a new house, right? Shouldn't I be able to tell them, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if you come back with a guilty, my guy's got to do 20 years. Think about it carefully. I can't say one peep about that. We got to educate the juries. Number 4. We need to abolish mandatory minimum sentences. I can't go to trial in a lot of these cases. I talk to the gun guys all the time, and the gun guys give me these scenarios, and they say, Marc, what if this, that, and the next thing happens, and then I shoot somebody in my house? Maybe it's a good shooting, but if it's close, they're never going to get to trial. because the situation is going to be such that if the jury comes back and says that they acted reasonably, they leave with me. They buy me dinner. If the jury comes back and says, no, you were unreasonable, then they go away for maybe 20 years. None of you will take that chance. All of you will walk in and plead guilty to a lesser charge because you're stuck with the mandatory minimum if you lose. We need to be able to give judges the power to say, you know what? Even though the person has been found guilty, and it could be first-degree murder still, there needs to be an option for probation, so people are allowed to send cases in front of the jury. I can't tell you how many cases I would have loved to have tried in front of a jury that I can't because the risk is too high. Number 5, we got to reduce caseloads, the crushing volume of the caseloads in our system. There's an article today in the Washington Post about this, and they name Maricopa County, and they have identified here some of the worst death penalty lawyers ever. You would think that in a death penalty case, you would have tons of resources and tons of attention. I've done lots of death penalty cases. I'm finishing one up now. We have such crushing caseloads that these public defenders and even prosecutors just don't have enough time. And that's never going to be reduced until the drug war ends, period. Huge lack of resources. And then finally, number 6, because I know I'm running out of time, we gotta get real about the Commerce Clause and about federal jurisdiction. We got this monstrosity of a federal justice system. I can remember talking to a federal prosecutor recently, and I said, is there anything you think you don't have jurisdiction over? And we talked about lots of things. And I said, what about a DUI case? Do you think the federal government could prosecute DUI cases? And he says, well, cars move in interstate commerce and all the parts are made into... He's absolutely right. This is a slam dunk win for the federal government in terms of a jurisdiction. There is nothing that I can think of that the federal government couldn't exercise its jurisdiction over. And so we got to get all these crimes out of the federal government. We got to get the Commerce Clause. And I know I can hear Butler over there because he taught me about the Commerce Clause. He's going to give me a hard time when I meet with him. But we got to do something different with the Commerce Clause because it reaches everything. It's an infinite source of endless federal jurisdiction. Until we fix that, there's no fixing the federal justice system. Anyways, let's just focus on winning hearts and minds. Whatever it is you do, if you write, if you speak, if you're Lou and you got a big website out there, I don't even care anymore if you run for office. I don't even care if you run as a Republican and you're Rand Paul. More power to him.
I don't know if you got my talk on that, but one of the things that Butler said there is, and I don't think he originated, he may have got this from, I think maybe Murray Rothbard, but, think of it as a bus moving in the direction of freedom. And some people want to get off earlier and other people want to go all the way to the end. That's fine. Given that we're in the midst of a tyrannical police state right now, let's just start getting moving in the right direction. And I generally agree with that. I guess maybe I've softened up just a tad in terms of my thought process there, because I used to be in the other camp where I was much more of the, oh my God, you want to reduce taxes. Don't you know taxes are theft? We need to abolish taxes. And of course that's true. But frankly, I'd rather pay lower taxes. I prefer no taxes, but I'd rather have the thief steal less of my money than more of my money. And as soon as he steals less, let's try to convince him to steal even less, or maybe even not to steal at all. So I'm not going to get too upset with people. I generally like to have 2 different discussions with people. One discussion of where do you want the bus to go to? I think the bus ought to go all the way to the end and have a free society, and see if we can get some agreement there. Then I have the secondary discussion. Given that we're in a tyrannical police state right now, what types of things would you like to do to try to move the bus in that direction? And people can disagree on that point. And I'm not arrogant enough to think I've got all the answers on that. Let's have people, just like in a free market, right? Let's have a free market of libertarian ideas and let some people write and some speak and some run for public office and some can be Republicans, some can be Democrats. If you want to run as a socialist, as long as your heart's really a libertarian, I don't care. I'll support you.
Yeah, absolutely. And You're going to be at Anarchapulco, and you're going to be talking to a lot of people there, which will be great. You're a very personable person, and there's, I think what I heard about Anarchapulco for this year, the first one, is that most people liked it a lot, and I'm not just saying that. That's what I heard, that pretty much everyone really liked it a lot. But this year they want even more sort of positivity, less talking about what's wrong with the state and more on how we fix it and things like that. And it sounds like you're on the same page.
That's exactly where I'm at, and I am intending to give a talk that tries to make the tent a little bit bigger. And really, I want people to not just focus. And we beat the dead horse about freedom, 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 and I'm okay with that because I love freedom so much. But to me, freedom is just a necessary precondition to peace. And so I want to talk a little bit about peace. You can't have peace if people are coercing people all over the place. So we can't even talk about peace yet until we get people convinced on freedom. But Anarchapulco, I'm expecting, is a place where people will be generally convinced about freedom. So I want to push things a little bit and maybe talk about peace. I may even throw out the big L word, because I think peace is a precondition to love. And I think love is an important point too. And I may say something about that. I don't know, at risk of being yelled at or being considered a softie or something like that. I'm okay with that at this point in my life. I think there are some things that are important enough. We should just talk about them and move forward. But I think we're the real peace activists because we're moving towards a society without coercion. And then I want to try to get another aspect involved where we actually try to be friendly with people. We try to, I can get to freedom and still hate my neighbor, right? I can still give them the finger when I come out in the morning and say, screw you. And we're still having freedom as long as we're not coercing each other. But I'd like to get somewhere beyond that. I'd like to get outside my front door and say hello to my neighbor and have him say hello to me and have a relationship with him. And because at the end of the day, we're only on this planet for a real short blip in time. We're very, very extraordinarily lucky that we are the part of the universe that is animated and conscious, and we're here for a short period of time. That we know each other is even more spectacular. And what are we doing fighting with each other in this brief period of time on the planet? It's just outrageous. I mean, we should be at least tolerant of other people's peaceful views.
Yeah, absolutely. Just for people who don't know, Marc is one of the best speech makers I've ever seen. I think it's probably one of the reasons he's a good lawyer as well. So I'm really looking forward to your speech, Marc. And don't worry, I don't think you're going to get any boos when you bring up that peace is related to love and freedom is related to love. There's a lot of speakers who that's essentially what they focus on, including Max Egan and Zen Gardner. There's a whole bunch of people gravitating towards this sort of freedom idea now, which is shocking to me that this people didn't have this idea before, apparently, but we're getting all kinds of people, and yeah, there really is a lot of more people talking about, we need to improve this planet, we need to be kinder to our neighbors, we need to connect more with people, and that's one of the things that I've really noticed in the anarchist community in the past, not as much now, but definitely in the past, is very divisive. They'll try to find any reason to create a debate, because most of them are quite good debaters. They're sort of similar to you. They're smart and logical and rational, and so they can pick out if someone said something slightly wrong. But I wouldn't focus on hammering that into somebody. I'd focus more on spreading these ideas and trying to create a better world.
Yeah, I think at the Mises Institute event, Butler Schaefer had noted that, hey, back in the 60s and early 70s, when they were sort of starting with this word libertarian, the group of libertarians in the United States was so small that when somebody traveled to another state, it was, oh, look up Joe. He's the libertarian out in California, wherever. Oh, we got a libertarian there? Yes, we do. And it's really spectacular how people interested in the freedom movement have sort of flocked to this. And that's because we make sense and it's right. And once they start thinking about things in a different paradigm, and I try to put things into the moral world bucket and the legal world bucket. And people confuse those two buckets, right? We can completely disagree on issues of morality, and we should talk about it. But if we can agree that only the very small, thin, strictly construed issues of legal issues, which are when we get to an issue of a trespass, where we get to a force or fraud, those are the things that should be illegal. And the other stuff is fun to talk about. And we don't necessarily have to force our moral opinions on other people. I will tell you this, But Jeff, I'll give you a little preview of something else that I've been troubled by lately. I don't know if you read an article that I wrote entitled The Immorality of Eating Steak and Why I Acknowledge Your Right to Eat It. That was probably the most complex article I've written because I just personally, as a big lifelong meat eater until the last couple of years, and I mean a crazy meat eater. If I didn't have some kind of meat in every meal for decades, I didn't feel like I was eating. I just sort of swept under the rug this non-initiation of force principle in regards to animals and said, well, they're animals, it doesn't really apply to them, and that was the end of my analysis. But once I gave up, strictly for health reasons, eating animals, I then was able, I think, to think about this issue in a sort of an unbiased way and say, well, is it okay? I mean, can I aggress against a bonobo monkey and still call myself a man of peace and a non-initiator of force and these types of issues? And it's actually, I found it to be a very, very difficult question. At the end of the day, I think it's worthy of our discussion. It's something we ought to talk about, and I think it's an evolving issue. I think that, no, we don't get to aggress against bonobo monkeys, and we saw a similar reaction with the world. Remember when that guy from the United States shot Cecil the lion? There was an outrage. People don't get outraged when rats are aggressed upon, and maybe rightly so. But things are drifting in a certain direction in terms of that, and I think it's a difficult question, difficult enough that I think we treat it as a moral issue, which is why, to me, I've concluded that aggressing against animals, most animals, is at least immoral. But I'm not prepared to say that we should stick this in the legal world because reasonable minds honestly trying to apply the non-aggression principle really can disagree on this issue. I feel the same way about the abortion question. That's a hard issue as well. Reasonable people honestly trying to apply the non-aggression principle can struggle with that and come down on either side. And as long as that's the case, I think we ought to agree to treat it as a moral issue unless and until we get enough people who are saying, look, we think this is indeed a violation of the non-aggression principle. Then maybe we sort of move it into the legal world. But we got to be really sure before we put something in the legal world. We have to allow for other people, rational people, to have their sort of freedom of conscience to decide, hey, this really isn't an aggression against a non-aggressor. So I think it should be a moral issue. And that paper got me a lot of aggravation from objectivists who I find sometimes are maybe among the most aggravating of all groups of people to argue with because, and I'm not saying all objectivists, but the level of hubris from the objectivist community sometimes is unbearable.
Yeah, interesting. On the vegetarian thing, I was a vegetarian and a vegan for about 7 years when I was in my 20s, and I was just super unhealthy because I didn't like vegetables. So all I eat is like chips and spaghetti with like margarine or something, or tomato sauce, and I was just kind of fat and out of shape and didn't have much energy. So I went back to meat, but I've always said that I think at some point each of us has to look at that as an issue if we want true non-aggression on this planet. And it's something that I've said before, and I'll say again, that I kind of feel bad I eat meat. I want to try to work towards eating less meat and maybe no meat again. I do try to eat meat that I'm fairly sure came from a fairly decent place so that the animals were treated well. And here in Mexico, it's all local, mostly organic sort of farms. So it's a lot better than what's in a lot of places, including the U.S., with factory farming is just heinous.
A lot of the libertarians who are more of the deep thinker types, whether you eat meat or not, you're at least bothered by this. And I still eat some fish now and then, and every time I do, I feel bad about it. I'm wondering if I can honestly call myself a man of peace. And I especially when you see those videos of the factory farms, this sort of Auschwitz for animals. And I'm scratching my head and I'm saying to myself, here I am, this great man of peace and freedom, and I'm supporting this horrible Auschwitz for really sentient beings. I feel obviously differently about mosquitoes, but figuring out where the line is between the two is a difficult question. I don't know, did you see my article on this point?
I saw the article, but I thought, oh, that's going to be interesting, but I never got around to reading it yet.
I'll send it to you, and I just love to get your take on it. It was probably more controversial than any other article I've ever written, and the objectivists are still upset about it. what I can distill from the I get two major objections. One is, oh, the Lord said I should take dominion over all the animals so I can do whatever I want. And then the objective is to say, man's mind is a special kind of reasoning machine, and because of that reason, animals don't reason like we do, and therefore we can do whatever we want to them. It's been unsatisfying to me. I think that I suffered from a lot of bias on this because I love to eat my cheeseburgers. But, if you really sit down and try to grapple with this thing, and you'll see I did. I came up in my article, I put Marc Victor's subjective animal rights chart, knowing that I might change my mind tomorrow about it, but it was my attempt to try to figure out where the line is. And I think it matters what the purpose of killing is too, right? I mean, you can kill a human being if it's self-defense. So I think there's a difference between sort of hunting, killing for fun, and self-defense. You've got to boil all that down. But anyways, take a look at it. I was thinking about bringing it up and hoping to generate some controversy there. I really want to get people energized and thinking about some of the tougher issues, because there's a lot of issues that libertarians disagree on that are very difficult questions. And I'm sort of aiming for this sort of simplistic libertarian who thinks we're going to all be living in utopia if we can get a free society.
Oh yeah, no, it's not black and white at all. A lot of issues. As far as the not killing animals, yeah, if I have like a snake, I live in a tropical area. If I have a snake or a big spider in the house, like a scorpion, I usually try not to kill it. I try to just throw it out far away from the house somewhere. I think if I had to kill my own beef or pork or chicken, there'd be no way I would do it. I think it's just because it's so removed and it tastes so good, and I was brought up on it, that it is very difficult to sort of give up. But I have given it up many times, and I think I've always said, first let's free the humans, then we'll work on the animals, because once we free the humans, it'll be pretty easy after that, I think.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. I don't know. I just wonder, I felt just a little hypocritical when I thought about the thing, presenting myself as a man of peace and abhorring all violence, and here I am supporting this stuff. And I felt like you. It's one thing when you're taking it out of the plastic wrap and the styrofoam and it just looks like this hunk of meat. It's another thing when you're watching the video about, hitting him in the head and chopping his head off and stuff like that. And I think, man, I don't want anything to do with that. And then I thought I might just been brainwashed here because I'm so far removed, from the thing. Am I really in the matrix here? So I don't know, but interesting questions. I don't pretend to have the right answer on any of this stuff. I just raise it as a difficult question. And, it's one of those things, to the extent I resolve it at all, I say, well, different communities might feel differently about it at the end of the day, and who am I to figure out where the line is on this stuff? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. No, these are all interesting topics that need to be talked about. But yeah, I agree with you in general on the vegetarian sort of thing. I think Mark Zuckerberg, one of the only things I saw him do that I thought was quite impressive was he said that he wants to kill a chicken with his own hands, which, you can argue about how impressive that is. But because he thinks if you're going to eat them, you should have to at least once go through the process of killing it so you can at least see what you're doing. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think if people had to do that or participate in it, they might feel differently about the act. Because, just something inside, this stuff, that's where it comes from, right? All this stuff comes from inside. And I think if you look at it and you see it, you're less than human if you look at this stuff and you think, oh, this is okay, I'm happy about this. I don't know, it seems pretty fucked up.
So yeah, these are all issues and interesting. We'll be talking about all these in Anarchapulco. I don't want to keep it too long because I know you're very busy freeing a lot of people who have been kidnapped and put in cages for having plants in their pocket or trying to defend themselves. So if you want, Marc, you always have a lot to say. Finish up with anything you want to talk about and let people know where they can find out more information on you, because for anarchists out there, what you want if you do get kidnapped and put in a cage is an anarchist lawyer who totally understands what you understand as well. And actually, I sort of used Marc's services once for a friend who got kidnapped for spilling a drink in Las Vegas. So let people know about where they can find out more about you as well.
I'm super easy to get a hold of. I mean, you can imagine my website for 20 years has been attorneyforfreedom.com. So what else could it possibly be? You can also put Marc Victor right into Google, and there'll be a whole host of things that come up. So I'm very easy to get a hold of, and that's fine. But, really, I love being a lawyer, and I love fighting the government and defending people against the government. But really, I'm a freedom activist above and beyond that. My calling in life is to try to leave the planet a better place than I found it, and to do my part as a good sort of animated portion of the universe to try to improve things for future animated portions of the universe that are going to be following. And I think that's what you're doing as well. And so, I constantly I'm easy to get to volunteer my time to try to reach people. This is interesting for me to talk to anarcho-capitalists, but I really like to talk to the socialists. I would love to be invited to come talk to the Bernie Sanders convention or something like that about why he's wrong and why we should have a free society and all this other stuff. So maybe there'll be some discussion of how we outreach to these other groups. And I don't know, there's a lot of fun things we could do with this. I'm really happy you organized it. I'm especially happy you put it in Acapulco. So I get a good excuse to take some time off of work and head down there. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah, me too. So just a few months away now. So if you don't know Anarchapulco, just go to anarchapulco.com. Kind of hard to spell if you're listening on the radio. ANARCHAPULCO.com. And that's February 19th to 21st. A lot of great people like the freedom fighter, lawyer for freedom, Marc Victor will be there. And all these sort of conversations that we've been having will be had on the beach here in Mexico in what I consider to be a much freer place. So if you like this video, like, subscribe, share down below. And that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.
Well, I suppose that it's a matter of degree, but I have a couple of the first principles that I expect that you, Jeff, and most people watching and listening to us now would accept. And that is, first, that the individual is greater than the state. The individual has an immortal soul and free will. The state is merely an aggregation of people trying to live at somebody else's expense with a monopoly on force. Theoretically, it's here today and gone tomorrow.
Well, we were running too, because my son we did all this. My autistic son did not have a passport. That's why we went in a cruise ship. We wanted to get out of the country, but to fly, you need a passport. To drive across borders, you need a passport, but a cruise ship, you don't need a passport.
I think they're changing that.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. So.
From Acapulco, Mexico, this is Anarchast.